You could be sitting at a full dinner table, the air buzzing with the conversation of your children and grandchildren. The room is warm, the plates are full, and on the surface, everything looks complete. Yet a quiet space can open up inside you, a feeling of being apart, even as you are in the very middle of it all. If you have ever felt this, a profound solitude, even within the family you built, then you know this is not about the presence of people. It is about the absence of connection. This channel is a space for exploring those quiet, complicated emotions that come with a life fully lived. Today, we are going to gently examine the nature of this particular loneliness, the one that can exist in a crowded room. It is a feeling born not from being alone, but from being unseen in the place you are meant to be most seen. If these kinds of conversations resonate with you, if they offer a sense of being understood, please consider supporting this channel by liking this video and subscribing. It helps us continue to create content for thoughtful reflection. For more on the psychology of family and aging, you can find a playlist linked at the end of this video. Let us begin by exploring the quiet regrets that often form the foundation of this feeling, the realizations that arrive softly and far too late. The foundation for this specific loneliness is often laid quietly over decades with the most well-intentioned of materials. It is built with the phrase, "We'll have time for that later." You say it to your partner when you're both exhausted from work, promising a proper conversation on the weekend that gets swallowed by chores. You think it about your child, a book they want you to read to them, a game they want to play, as you glance at a looming deadline on your computer screen. You whisper it to yourself about the trip you want to take, the hobby you want to rediscover, the old friend you truly need to call. Later becomes the psychological savings account where you deposit all the moments of true presence, all the potential for deep connection, believing you will make a grand withdrawal in some distant, peaceful future. You trade the spontaneous afternoon walk for an extra hour at the office, believing the sacrifice is for them, for the family, for a more secure tomorrow. You miss the school play to finish a project, rationalizing that your physical presence is less important than providing stability. You learn to measure your love in practical outputs, the mortgage paid, the tuition covered, the reliable car in the driveway. And in this careful, responsible economy of family life, the currency of shared meaningless time, the silly jokes, the long silences on a porch swing, the listening without an agenda, becomes devalued. It feels like a luxury you cannot afford when there are so many necessities to manage. This creates a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the emotional landscape of your home. Relationships begin to function like well-run departments in a small company. You discuss logistics, schedules, finances, home repairs with efficiency. You become teammates managing a shared project called Our Life. And while there is love in this, a deep and abiding commitment, the playful, curious, vulnerable exploration of each other's inner worlds can gradually fade into the background. You stop asking, "What are you dreaming about?" because the question feels indulgent against the more pressing, "What needs fixing?" You assume you know the person across from you because you know their habits, their preferences, their roles. But the person they are becoming, the private struggles they face with their own mortality and meaning, the quiet joys they no longer mention because they seem too small, these become uncharted territory. The first true regret often surfaces not with a bang, but with a quiet, cold clarity. It might arrive when your last child leaves home, and the silence in the house is no longer filled with the logistical noise that kept you and your partner in constant, practical contact. You look across the table and see a kind, familiar stranger.
You realize you have spent 20 years building a life side by side, but not necessarily together in the way you once imagined. The shared mission is accomplished, the nest is empty, and now you're left with the foundational question: who are we, just us, without the project of raising a family? Or perhaps it surfaces at a milestone birthday, a retirement party, where people speak of your achievements and your character. You smile and accept the praise, but inside you feel a strange hollowness. The narrative they're celebrating, the dedicated worker, the reliable parent, feels like a biography of a persona. It misses the chapters about the music you stopped playing, the places you never saw, the conversations you never had with your own parents before they were gone. You realize you have been living a script written by duty and expectation, and somewhere along the way, you lost the draft of the more personal, more authentic story you once hoped to tell. This regret is for the version of yourself you postponed for the sake of the family unit. The more spontaneous, adventurous, or creatively risky version of you was gently boxed away, labeled for later. You told yourself it was a temporary shelving, a strategic retreat, but later has a way of becoming never. The responsibilities never truly end, they just change shape, and one day you understand that the person in the box has grown quiet. Their desires have atrophied from lack of use. The dreams you shared with your partner when you were young, the shared vision that was more about feeling and experience than about assets and security, now feel like artifacts from a different civilization. You can look at them, but you can no longer speak their language.
This realization carries a unique pain because it is intertwined with love. You cannot resent the family you chose and cherish, so the regret turns inward. It becomes a quiet grief for the roads not taken, not out of selfishness, but out of a love that expressed itself primarily through provision and protection, and less through shared vulnerability and mutual discovery. You're provided a roof, but perhaps you forgot to build a garden where your souls could play. You protected from hardship, but perhaps you also protected from the kind of raw, honest exchanges that forge the deepest bonds. This is the first heavy truth, that a life can be built on a foundation of love and duty and still leave a quiet, lonely space within the very structure you created. The house is sturdy, but it echoes. And in those echoes, you begin to hear not the noise of the family you have, but the silence of the connections that were somehow missed along the way. This feeling, this emotional solitude within the family fortress, is what we must now gently unpack.
This is the central paradox of the loneliness we are exploring. It flourishes not in absence, but in presence. It is the chill you feel in the warm room. It is the silence you hear beneath the chatter. It is the feeling of being a ghost at your own family gathering, smiling, nodding, pouring drinks, while inside you are floating slightly above the scene, observing it, but not fully inhabiting it. Your children talk of their lives, their work, their friends, their minor crises, and you listen with genuine care. But the conversation stays in the safe zone of events and opinions. It rarely dips into the waters of fear, of profound hope, of existential wondering. You are the parent, the grandparent, the rock, and rocks are not supposed to confess their own wear from the sea. This emotional distance is rarely anyone's fault. It is the slow accumulation of 1,000 small practical choices. Over the years, you learn to filter your own emotional world. A bad day at work was not brought home because the children needed stability. A deep-seated fear about aging or purpose was swallowed because you didn't want to burden your partner who had their own worries. Grief over a lost friend was processed privately, in the car or the shower, so as not to cast a shadow on the family mood. You became the curator of the household's emotional climate, and in doing so, you placed your own more complex weather systems into a personal vault. The psychology here is one of perceived burden. You begin to believe, often subconsciously, that your full emotional reality, with its regrets, its loneliness, its unanswerable questions, is too heavy, too complicated, or too sad to impose on the people you love. You see their busy lives, their own stresses, and you feel your internal world is an anachronism. It belongs to a different time, a different pace. So you perform a version of yourself that is simpler, more content, less needy. You say, "I'm fine," and you learn to say it so convincingly that eventually they stop asking in the way that seeks a real answer. They ask out of habit, and you reply out of protection. A silent pact is formed. We will protect each other from the full weight of our individual sorrows.
This extends to friendships as well. The old friends who knew you before you were a parent, before the career was set, begin to fade. It is not a dramatic fight, it is a slow drifting. Your worlds no longer align. Your conversations become periodic updates, nostalgic reminiscing about the past, but lack the texture of present, shared experience. You lose the witnesses to your life, the people who could say, "That's not like you," or "I remember when you dreamed of this." Without them, your identity can slowly solidify into the roles you play at home. You are who you are to your family, and that version feels increasingly incomplete. Within the family unit, a strange role reversal can occur. As you age, you may become the dependent in practical ways, but emotionally, you can become the caretaker in a new sense. You downplay your aches, your loneliness, your fears about diminishing capacity. You become an audience for their lives, cheering from the sidelines, while the stadium of your own inner life feels empty and quiet. They love you, but they love the idea of you as strong, as settled as the foundation. To show profound vulnerability feels like it might shatter that idea and worry them. So you maintain the facade, and the loneliness grows within its walls. The holidays, the birthdays, the Sunday dinners, these become the highlights, the evidence of a connected life, and yet they can be the moments when the loneliness is most acute. Surrounded by the noise and the love, you feel the gap between the celebration and your inner stillness. You see the family as a beautiful, finished tapestry, and you feel yourself as a single, loose thread on the backside, connected but hidden, essential but unseen. The laughter is real, the love is real, but it flows around you, not through you in the way it once did.
In this space, memories become more vivid than the present moment. The laughter of your young children, long since grown, echoes louder in your mind than the conversation happening in front of you. The memory of a long, meandering talk with your spouse 30 years ago feels more intimate than the efficient, logistical discussions you have now. The past becomes a country you visit more frequently because there you felt more connected, more alive, more you. The present can feel like watching a play about your own life where you know all the characters but have forgotten your lines. This is the silent loss. It is not the loss of people, but the loss of a certain quality of connection. It is the loss of being truly known. It is the loss of the shared secret language that couples develop, which can go rusty from lack of use. It is the loss of feeling like someone is genuinely curious about the person you are now, not just respectful of the person you were. This loneliness is a testament to love. You can only miss a connection you once had or deeply desired, but it is a love that mourns its own incomplete expression. And it is from this quiet, memorial space that we begin to sift through the past, not to live there, but to understand what we are truly mourning and what, if anything, can be reclaimed. When the present moment feels thin, when the connections around you feel functional rather than nourishing, the mind naturally seeks refuge. It does not always look forward. Often it turns and walks gently backwards into the landscape of memory. This is not mere recollection, this is nostalgia.
memory infused with a poignant, golden-hued longing. It is the past revisited, not as it was, but as it feels through the filter of loss and love. The triggers are sensory, bypassing the intellect to speak directly to the heart. The particular smell of rain on hot asphalt can suddenly transport you to a summer evening from your childhood, a feeling of limitless time and safety washing over you with a physical force. A few notes of a song from your early years with your partner can bring a sharp, sweet ache, a memory not just of the event, but of the person you were then and the way you felt seen by them. The weight of a child, now an adult, is remembered in your arms, a visceral memory of pure connection that no conversation can replicate. Nostalgia is often a conversation with a lost self. You miss not just the people, but the version of you that existed in relation to them. The more patient father you were on a certain holiday, the more adventurous partner you were on a long-forgotten trip, the more hopeful and unburdened self that believed in a future of endless shared discovery. In nostalgia, you are not just missing a time, you are paying respects to a departed aspect of your own identity.
This is where nostalgia entwines inseparably with regret. For within these warm, glowing memories, there often lies a cold, sharp sliver of if only. You remember the family vacation, but the regret is for being so stressed about the budget and the itinerary that you forgot to simply be there. You remember your children's laughter, but the regret is for the times you silenced it because you needed quiet, because you were tired, because you didn't recognize the sacred ordinariness of that particular noise. The memory of your parents is tinged with the regret of not asking the better questions when you had the chance. Not about their advice, but about their dreams, their regrets, their secret joys. These regrets are more painful than professional failures because they are not about skill or circumstance. They are about attention, about presence, about the quality of your heart in a given moment. A failed business venture can be analyzed and learned from, but the memory of turning away from a child who wanted your attention, of prioritizing the urgent over the important with your partner, of letting a meaningful conversation lapse because you were distracted by something trivial, these speak to a failure of spirit. They ask the quiet, devastating question, why wasn't I there when I was literally right there? The sensory language of this regret is profound. It lives in the silence that fell after you chose not to speak your affection. It is in the fading warmth on the passenger seat after you dropped your grown child at the airport. It is in the empty space at the kitchen table where a parent once sat. It is in the unplayed piano, now a piece of furniture holding photographs. These are not dramatic losses. They are quiet, domestic, and deeply personal. They are the echoes of choices made, and more importantly, of moments not fully received.
As we age, this process of life review is natural, even necessary. The brain, less tasked with future planning, turns its energy toward making sense of the narrative. We are the authors, trying to understand our own story's themes, its turning points, its moral. Regret, in this process, is the editor's red pen. It highlights the passages where the prose was rushed, where the character development was lacking, where the opportunity for a beautiful scene was missed for a utilitarian one. But this revisiting is not a sentence to endless sadness. It is, if we allow it, the beginning of understanding. To feel the full, aching weight of nostalgic regret is to finally, viscerally comprehend the value of what you had. The chaotic family dinner you wished would end now teaches you decades later about the precious, fleeting chaos of togetherness. The patient listening you didn't offer teaches you about the profound gift of undivided attention. The dream you set aside for practicality teaches you about the cost of silencing your own soul's whisper. This is the subtle turning. The heavy emotion of regret begins to transform. It is no longer just a weapon of self-reproach. Its very pain contains a lesson. It is a late but deeply felt education in what actually matters. The ache of the past becomes a compass, pointing with quiet insistence toward a different way of being in whatever time remains. Not with a frantic energy to recapture what's lost, but with a slow, deliberate intention to truly inhabit what is here. The memories, in their bittersweet clarity, are not just hauntings, they are signposts. And from this place of painful clarity, a fragile, hard-won wisdom can begin to emerge.
This wisdom does not arrive with fanfare. It is not a list of rules to post on the refrigerator. It is a quiet shift in perception, earned through the long labor of regret and reflection. It is the understanding that comes not from getting what you wanted, but from finally realizing what was always there, waiting for your attention. The first piece of this wisdom is a radical redefinition of time. You finally stop seeing it as a linear path to a destination, retirement, a finished project, a peaceful future. You begin to feel it as a series of present moments, each one containing its own possibility for connection, however small. The grand, planned gestures of connection you always postponed, the big trip, the perfect reunion, lose their urgency. In their place grows an appreciation for the micro moment, the sincere question asked and truly listened to, the shared smile over a cup of coffee, the hand placed on an arm without a word. You understand that a lifetime of love is not stored in a few spectacular events, but in an accumulation of these tiny, attentive exchanges. The regret for wasted years softens into a resolve not to waste this current hour. From this flows a second crucial understanding. Presence is the ultimate offering. You see now that your physical presence was never the point. It was your emotional, psychological presence that was the true gift and the one most often rationed. The wisdom is to offer that presence now, without agenda. To sit with your partner in a silence that is companionable, not empty. To listen to your grandchild's rambling story with the full focus you once reserved for board meetings. To understand that being with someone means your inner world is quiet enough to let their world in. It is the act of putting down the mental list, the unspoken worry, the rehearsal of what you'll say next, and simply receiving the person in front of you. This wisdom also brings a softening toward yourself and others. You see the chain of cause and effect with compassion. You see the young parent you were, stretched thin and scared, doing their best. You see your partner carrying their own silent burdens. The blame and resentment that may have hardened over the years begin to thaw. You realize that everyone in your family story was fighting a battle you knew nothing about, yourself included. Forgiveness is no longer a moral imperative, it is a practical necessity for peace. It is the act of unclenching your heart. You forgive not to excuse, but to release yourself from the endless loop of what should have been. There is a deep, settling wisdom in simplicity. The frantic need to add more experiences, more things, more stimulation, quietly departs. You find a profound sufficiency in less. The precise warmth of sunlight through a window, the taste of a perfectly ripe piece of fruit, the deep comfort of a familiar worn blanket, the beauty of a single bird at a feeder. The world, which you once had to navigate and conquer, now becomes a phenomenon to be witnessed. You are no longer the central actor in every scene. You become a grateful observer. And in that observation, you find a connection to something larger than the family drama, larger than your own personal narrative.
Finally, this wisdom makes peace with loneliness itself. You stop seeing it as a failure of your family or your life. You begin to understand it as an inevitable part of the human condition, especially for one who has lived long and loved deeply. The loneliness is not the absence of love, but the space around it. It is the quiet room where the echoes of your life are heard most clearly. You learn to sit with it, not as an enemy, but as a fellow traveler. It is the price of having a rich interior world, of having memories that matter. In its quiet way, it becomes a form of solitude, a space for your own thoughts and feelings to simply be, unedited and unfiltered. So what do you do with this wisdom? You do not launch a grand campaign to fix the past. You begin quietly in the present. You might reach for your partner's hand during a television show for no reason. You might ask your child a question that has no practical purpose, just curiosity. You might speak a small, true thing about yourself, a vulnerability, and simply let it sit there without justification. You listen more than you speak. You appreciate more than you critique.
You understand that the family you have is not the family of your nostalgic dreams or your earlier regrets. It is a collection of flawed, beautiful adults connected by history and love, all doing their best. Your role is no longer to lead or provide or manage. It is simply to be there as honestly and as present as you can be. To be a calm, accepting presence in their stormy lives, to love them without needing to direct them. The regrets do not vanish. They become part of the landscape of your soul, like gentle rolling hills. They give your inner world its depth and its texture. They are the proof that you cared, that you loved, that things mattered enough to regret their passing. And in this acceptance, a gentle peace becomes possible. It is not the happiness of youth. It is something quieter, more durable. It is the peace of understanding, of softened edges, of a love that has settled into a deep, quiet bedrock. You sit in your chair, in the warm room full of your family's noise, and you feel the loneliness, but you are no longer afraid of it. You feel the regret, but you are no longer defined by it. You are simply there, a part of the tapestry, finally able to see the whole, beautiful, imperfect pattern from a place of quiet grace. And for now, in this moment, that is enough.